Hello and welcome. Let us talk a little bit today about ethics training in communication possibilities in programs. A major step in developing an effective ethics program is actually implementing a training program and properly communicating that through an effective system that educates employees about the company's overall standards. It can educate employees about the company's policies and expectations, about the relevant laws and regulations that apply to the organization or to the industry, and the general social standards that's expected of everyone in the organization. It can make employees aware of available resources, about supporting systems, and designated personnel who can assist them with ethical and legal advice in the organization. It can empower employees to ask difficult and tough questions and make ethical decisions based on the recommendations of HR department or the legal counsel that's available in the organization. Ethics training programs can be influenced by and they can influence the corporate culture, the coworkers, the supervisors, the opportunities that are available to engage in unethical behavior in a given environment. So full awareness of a company's philosophy of management, their rules and procedures can actually strengthen both the corporate culture and the ethical stance of a person's peers and supervisors in a department or organization. Ethics training must start with a foundation, with a code of ethics, with a procedure for airing ethical concerns, line and staff involvement and engagement, as well as executive priorities on ethics that are communicated to employees on a consistent basis and that are actually enforced consistently. Training and communication initiatives should reflect the unique characteristics of any organization. There are many different training methods. Since I was a trainer for corporate development of managers and values and guidelines regarding ethics, I can tell you there are many different training methods that companies can use, such as hands-on experience or even behavioral simulations and having role plays, taking online classes nowadays and having different modules completed on a regular basis, and obviously lectures or presentations by senior managers and then consultants regarding ethics and proper codes of conduct in the organization. Top executives must communicate with managers at the operations level and enforce overall ethical standards within the organization at all times. When measuring the effectiveness of an ethics program, it is very, very important to get input from employees at all levels. Now let us talk a little bit about systems to monitor and enforce ethical standards. An effective ethics program employs a variety of resources to monitor ethical conduct and to measure the program's overall effectiveness on an ongoing basis. So observing employees, having internal audits, surveys, reporting systems, and investigations can all actually assess compliance with the company's ethical code as well as the company's standards. Having an external audit and review of the company activities may sometimes be helpful in developing benchmarks of compliance. Also, questionnaires can serve as benchmarks in an ongoing assessment of ethical performance by measuring employees' overall ethical perceptions of their own company, their departments, and their supervisors, as well as their coworkers, and obviously themselves, as well as serving as a means of actually developing ratings of ethical or unethical practices within the company and also sometimes within the industry. The existence of an internal system that allows employees to report misconduct is especially useful for monitoring and evaluating ethical performance. But we need to make sure that these reporting processes are actually anonymous hotlines, or anonymity and confidentiality are enforced. This is one of the reasons why many companies hire outside consultants who have no formal relationship with the company other than the fact that they would report what employees complain about or what their views are regarding ethical misconducts within the organization. Companies are increasingly using consultants that provide professional case management services and software related to ethics programs. If a company is not making progress toward creating and maintaining an ethical culture, then it needs to determine why and take corrective actions as soon as possible, either by enforcing the current standards more strictly or setting new higher standards for everybody to meet. Keep in mind that it's very important that there is consistent enforcement in necessary disciplinary action, because they are essential to a functional ethics or compliance program in any organization. There should also be continuous improvement of the ethics program. Implementation requires designing certain activities to achieve organizational objectives using available resources to your department or to your employees and managers in given existing constraints that is there for your department or for your organization. Ultimately, implementation translates into a specific plan of action into operational terms, and implementation establish a means by which the company's ethical performance will be monitored, controlled, as well as continuously improved. A company's ability to plan and implement ethical business standards does depend, in part at least, on how it structures various resources and activities to achieve its ethical objectives. If a company determines that its ethical performance has been less than satisfactory, then executives may want to change how certain kinds of decisions are actually made within that organization. What about ethics officers in the organization? Organizational ethics programs must have oversight by somebody who is somewhat high-ranking and influential and somewhat known to respect the legal standards and have high ethical standards. So if you can find this individual, then hopefully this person can be delegated the responsibility of ethics officer or ethics officers. Ethics officers are responsible for managing the company's ethics and legal compliance programs. They're usually responsible for assessing the needs and risks an organization-wide program must address, for the development and distribution of code of conduct or ethics in general. They're responsible for conducting training programs for employees. They're responsible for establishing and maintaining a confidential service to answer employees' questions and ethical issues or concerns that they may encounter every single day. These ethics officers are responsible for making sure that the company is in compliance with government regulations at all times. And the challenge here becomes that government rules sometimes change, so therefore they have to keep up with the industry and the rules that are supplied by the government locally and nationally to make sure the organization is in alignment with it. These ethics officers are also responsible for monitoring and auditing ethical conduct, and they're responsible for taking action on possible violations of the company's code. They're responsible for reviewing and updating the organization's code of conduct. Although recommended as a best practice, it is not common for ethics officers to report directly to the board of directors. Ethics officers often report directly to the chief executive officer and may have some access to the board as well. Let us now talk about some common mistakes in designing and implementing ethics programs. Many business leaders actually recognize that they need to have an ethics program, but few of them take the time to answer some of the fundamental questions about the goals of these programs for their organizations. The first mistake is a failure to understand and actually appreciate the goals of an ethics program. So those goals have to be very specific and very relevant. A second mistake is not setting realistic and measurable program objectives for an ethics training program or an ethics program in general. Senior management's failure to take ownership of the ethics programs is actually a third mistake that often companies make. Maintaining an ethical culture is nearly impossible if the chief executives and senior managers do not support the ethical culture or the ethical standards that are expected of everyone in the organization. Developing program material that do not address the needs of the average employee is actually a fourth mistake. So you need to make sure that all of the training program, the code of ethics, the statements, the values, and the consistent enforcement of the ethics program actually addresses specific behaviors that the employees may face every single day. Transferring an American program to a firm's international operation in Hong Kong, in Beijing, in Paris, in Hamburg, in different parts of, let's say, Bangkok, or in Kabul, or in Lahore, actually could be another mistake that companies make. Because what is appropriate in the United States may not be appropriate in Beijing, or in Paris, or in Kabul, or in Lahore, or in Bangkok. So we need to take cultural differences into consideration. In multinational firms, executives should actually involve their overseas personnel as early as possible in the development of this ethics program or process. A final mistake in designing an ethics program is that there is little more than a series of lectures. In such cases, participants typically recall less than about 15% the day after the lecture. So just hearing the rules and policies or reading about it through YouTube video, or one person basically emphasizing it in some podcast, is not sufficient for remembering and then applying it in the workplace. So just lectures are not going to be sufficient to support an ethics program. So when you're designing a good ethics program, again, try to avoid these mistakes that are common in many organizations. Remember that once you design a good ethics program, you need to continuously improve it. So the total quality management program basically means you need to enhance it based on your learning curve, based on the experience, based on how it helps or does not help people, so you can make some adjustments for future training in future days, months, and years of your organization. We know that the best outcomes are likely to be realized by those who plan, those who actually do, but they also check their decisions to see what the impact is on others, and they act as part of the continuous cycle of making progressive improvements. So when you're making decisions every single day in the organization regarding ethical criteria, think about which one was the most helpful to the most number of people in your company, in your society, and how would you decide next time? Would you use the same criteria, or would you make a different decision? The only way to build and enhance the muscles of your professional brand image is to chisel it through high standards and ethical behaviors. This is why I always emphasize and say that you need to always police and evaluate and assess your behaviors through critical thinking all the time. Just like when people are exercising, their muscles get stronger. The same is true of you and I regarding our understanding of ethical framework and ethical criteria to make decisions that create win-win scenarios for all relevant individuals and stakeholders in our departments, in our organizations, in our society in general. Remember to encourage employees to think critically for themselves and to practice and exercise the core values in the code of conduct and the code of ethics that your organization provides for them onto their day-to-day basis, so they can make decisions that are fully aligned with your ethics statements, with your code of conduct, with your ethics program overall in the standards. Good luck. Remember that ethical behavior is a skill. So you need to police, evaluate, and improve your ethical muscles every single day, so you can manage and guide others effectively in your department, in your organization, and in society in general. Good luck.